A homeless, freezing woman knocked on 12 doors. The 13th was a rancher, and he let her in. Maria had never imagined that life could change so quickly. Only a few months ago, she had a small apartment in the town, a steady job at a local grocery store, and a routine that, while ordinary, gave her comfort. She had friends she could call, neighbors she waved to every morning, and small pleasures like buying a warm pastry from the bakery on Fridays. But life, as she had learned too painfully, could be unpredictable. It all started when Maria fell ill with a severe flu that lingered for weeks. She tried to push through, telling herself she just needed rest. But her employer had no patience for absences, even when she brought a doctor's note. One day, she arrived at work to find her manager looking at her with a frown she had never seen before. "We can't keep you on if you keep missing shifts," he said. Maria tried to explain, but the words seemed empty in the face of policies and deadlines. Within days, she was let go. Losing her job was the first domino. Without income, her bills piled up quickly. Rent became impossible to pay, and soon she had to leave her apartment. Friends offered kind words, but few could offer actual help. Some were struggling with their own lives. Maria packed a small bag with her belongings, a worn-out coat, a few pairs of clothes, her old boots, and a small notebook where she used to write. Everything she owned fit into that single bag, a bag that felt heavier than it had any right to, because it carried not just clothes but the weight of her worry and fear. The day she left her apartment, the sky was gray, and a biting wind cut across the streets. Maria pulled her coat tightly around herself, but it offered little protection from the cold. Her boots, though sturdy, were worn thin, and her socks were soaked from walking through melting snow. The town, which she had once walked with comfort, now felt vast and unwelcoming. Each street looked the same, every house a silent reminder that she had nowhere to go. She wandered aimlessly at first, unsure of where to head. The thought of sleeping on a park bench made her shiver not just from cold but from fear. People walked past her, some glancing briefly, others ignoring her completely. She hated feeling invisible, but at that moment, invisibility was her only shield. It allowed her to keep moving without someone confronting her or forcing her to explain her situation. By evening, the wind had grown sharper and snowflakes began to fall. They were light at first, drifting lazily, but soon the sky filled with white and the flakes began to sting her face. Maria hugged herself, trying to preserve whatever warmth she had left. Hunger gnawed at her stomach, but even the thought of food seemed far away, impossible to reach. She had saved a few coins from the last paycheck, enough perhaps for a small sandwich, but no open store seemed reachable in the worsening weather. As darkness fell, Maria realized that she had to find shelter. Her mind raced with options, but each one seemed to close before she could act. There was a church a few blocks away, but the doors were already shut. She thought about the local community center, but it was too far for her frozen feet to reach. Panic began to set in, not as a loud scream, but as a quiet, heavy pressure in her chest. She could feel herself trembling, first from the cold, then from fear, and then from the uncertainty of what would come next. Maria's steps became slower, heavier. Her thoughts kept spinning around in circles. How did she end up here? She had always been careful with her life, planning and saving when she could. She had always tried to do the right thing, and yet here she was cold, alone, and frightened. She felt a mix of embarrassment and sadness. Pride, she realized, was useless in a situation like this. The thought made her pause. She leaned against a lamppost, letting herself rest for a moment, but every gust of wind reminded her she couldn't stay still for long. The streets were quiet except for the occasional car that passed by, its headlights briefly illuminating her path. She noticed the houses, one after another, with their warm lights and cheerful decorations. Families sat inside, sharing meals, laughing, or watching television. The contrast made her stomach ache. Maria wondered how it felt to be safe inside, to have warmth and security. The thought brought tears to her eyes, which she wiped quickly, not wanting anyone to see her cry. But no one was around to see. She was alone, truly alone, and that realization hit her harder than the cold. With renewed determination, Maria decided she had to try knocking on doors. It was a long shot, but anything was better than standing in the freezing wind. She walked to the first house, her hands shaking as she raised her fist to knock. The sound of her knuckles on the wooden door echoed slightly in the night. A light appeared, a shadow crossed the window, and then silence. A voice from inside said, "Sorry, we can't help." Maria nodded, forcing a smile she didn't feel, and moved on to the next house. Knock after knock, door after door, the responses were the same. Some doors never opened. Some voices shouted that she had to leave. One man even told her to go back to the city where she came from. Each rejection cut deeper than the last. Maria felt herself shrinking, disappearing further with each no. The cold was no longer her only enemy. It was the loneliness, the sense that the world had turned away from her. By the time she reached the 12th door, her fingers were numb and her legs ached. She paused, her breath visible in the icy air, and considered giving up. But somewhere deep inside, a small spark refused to die. She remembered something her mother had once said, "Even when everything seems lost, someone will help you if you keep trying." Maria clung to that memory, repeating it like a prayer as she trudged toward the next house. Her heart raced as she approached the 13th home. It was different from the others, modest, with a small porch and a faint light glowing inside. She swallowed her fear, lifted her hand, and knocked. She didn't know who would answer or if anyone would answer at all. All she knew was that she couldn't stay out in the freezing night any longer. Her teeth chattered uncontrollably, and she hugged herself, wishing the warmth of a fire more than anything she had ever wished for. The door creaked open slowly, and a man's face appeared in the dim light. Maria could see the surprise in his eyes, but there was something else too, something softer, kinder, that she hadn't seen all night. She opened her mouth to speak, to ask, to plead, but words felt small against the magnitude of her fear and cold. The man looked at her, studied her, and then he smiled gently. "Come in," he said simply. Those two words, ordinary as they seemed, were the most beautiful words Maria had ever heard. As she stepped inside, leaving the cold behind, a wave of relief washed over her. She didn't know this man, didn't know what awaited her inside, but for the first time that evening, she felt hope. Hope that maybe, just maybe, there were still people in the world willing to show kindness to a stranger. And in that moment, shivering and exhausted, Maria realized that she had taken the first step toward safety, and toward a new beginning. The warmth hit Maria the moment she stepped inside. It was more than just the physical heat of a fire or the cozy air of a house. It was the kind of warmth that made her feel human again, that made her feel seen after hours of cold and loneliness. She shivered at first, the chill still lingering in her bones, but gradually, as she moved closer to the fireplace, her body began to relax. The man who had opened the door introduced himself as Tom. He was in his early 50s, rugged and strong, the kind of man who spent his life outdoors. His hands were calloused from work, and his face carried the sun-kissed lines of years spent on the ranch. But his eyes were kind, calm, and understanding, as if he could sense the exhaustion Maria had carried into his home. He gestured for her to sit on a chair near the fire, and she obeyed, her legs still trembling. Tom went into the kitchen, and the smell of something warm cooking filled the room. Maria's stomach growled. She hadn't eaten since that morning, and the gnawing hunger made her dizzy. She tried not to show it, embarrassed by the emptiness in her stomach, but Tom seemed to notice. He smiled without judgment and said simply, "Don't worry, sit, warm yourself. We'll have something to eat soon." Maria looked around the house as she waited. It was modest but comfortable, with simple wooden furniture and pictures of family on the walls. She could see the care that went into the home, the flowers in a vase, the neatly arranged books, the way the kitchen shone even in the soft evening light. Everything about it said stability, security, and warmth, things she had lost and hadn't realized how much she missed until now. When Tom returned with a bowl of soup and a piece of bread, Maria felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes. She accepted the meal quietly, afraid that her emotions might overwhelm her. The soup was warm and flavorful, and as she ate, the first real sense of relief she had felt in hours washed over her. The fire crackled beside her, the shadows dancing gently across the room, and for the first time that night, Maria began to feel safe. She wanted to explain her situation, but found that the words were heavy and awkward. How could she sum up months of struggle, loss, and fear in a few sentences? How could she make a stranger understand the desperation of sleeping in the cold, the hopelessness of knocking on 12 doors, and the relief of finally finding someone who cared? She tried anyway. I've had a rough day," she started, her voice trembling slightly. "I don't have anywhere to stay. I've been out in the cold all day." She paused, ashamed that she was speaking to a man she didn't know, worried he might judge her. But Tom only nodded, listening carefully without interruption. "That sounds very hard," he said gently. "You don't have to explain everything right now, just rest, eat, warm up. We'll figure out the rest later." His words were simple, but they carried an enormous weight. No one had said that to Maria in a long time. No one had offered her comfort without a hint of impatience or expectation. The kindness was overwhelming, and she realized just how much she had been craving it, not just the warmth, but the feeling that someone understood and cared about her well-being. After dinner, Tom brought her a blanket and a chair closer to the fireplace. He offered her a cup of hot tea, which Maria accepted with gratitude, wrapping her cold hands around the warm mug. She closed her eyes for a moment, letting the heat seep into her fingers, into her arms, and finally into her chest. She felt a weight lift slightly from her shoulders, the weight of the cold, the weight of fear, the weight of endless uncertainty. Tom sat across from her, sipping his own tea. They didn't speak much at first. The silence was comforting, not awkward. It was a silence filled with understanding, with acceptance, and Maria felt she could finally breathe again. The sound of the fire, the warmth in the room, and the faint scent of cooked food made her feel grounded. For hours, she had been floating in a cold, harsh world, and now she felt anchored. As Maria warmed herself, she began to notice small details. The walls were decorated with photographs of people she assumed were Tom's family, children, perhaps grandchildren, smiling brightly. There was a shelf filled with books, some well-read and worn, others new and untouched. On the counter, there were jars of preserves and honey. Everything about the house spoke of care and effort, of someone who worked hard and valued the simple joys of life. It was a world away from the harsh streets she had walked that evening. Gradually, Maria began to open up. She told Tom a little about herself, not the entire story, but enough for him to understand her situation. She spoke about her job at the grocery store, her illness, the bills, and how quickly everything had fallen apart. She told him about the apartment she had to leave behind, about the bag she carried with her few possessions. And with every word, she felt a mixture of shame and relief, the shame of needing help and the relief of finally being able to share her burden with someone willing to listen. Tom didn't interrupt. He didn't offer advice or criticism. He simply listened, nodding occasionally, his eyes calm and patient. There was a quiet respect in the way he treated her story, and it made Maria feel valued, as if her experiences mattered. She realized that this was rare, someone who would listen without judgment, who would offer kindness without expecting anything in return. As the night went on, Maria's exhaustion began to take over. The day's trials, the cold, the hunger, and the stress had drained her completely. She felt herself relaxing into the warmth of the chair, the blanket wrapped around her shoulders, the fire's heat radiating through the room. Her eyelids grew heavy, and she realized that for the first time in what felt like forever, she could rest without fear. Tom noticed her fatigue and offered a guest room for the night. Maria hesitated at first. She didn't want to impose, but Tom's gentle insistence reassured her. "You need rest," he said simply. "You can't face tomorrow if you're exhausted tonight. You've been through a lot." She nodded, accepting the offer, grateful beyond words. In the quiet of the guest room, Maria settled into the bed, feeling the soft sheets against her skin, the blanket pulling her into warmth. She thought about the events of the evening, the rejection, the cold, the despair, and finally the kindness she had found. She realized that in one night her life had shifted from hopelessness to possibility. For the first time in days, she felt a spark of hope, a belief that perhaps things could get better. She thought about Tom, the stranger who had opened his door to her. She wondered what had made him do it, why he chose to help her when 12 others had turned her away. She didn't know, and maybe she never would, but she knew that his act of kindness had changed everything for her. It was more than just a warm meal or a bed for the night. It was a reminder that humanity and compassion still existed, even in the darkest moments. As she drifted off to sleep, Maria made a quiet promise to herself. She didn't know what the future held, but she vowed to keep moving forward, to find stability again, and one day to pass on the kindness she had been shown. That night, as snow fell softly outside the window and the fire crackled in the next room, Maria felt a sense of peace she hadn't known in a long time. She knew the journey ahead would be difficult, but for the first time, she believed she could face it. The next morning would bring new challenges, decisions, and the reality of life outside this temporary safety. But Maria felt ready to face them. She had survived the night. found warmth and compassion, and discovered that even in the coldest, loneliest moments, there could be hope. And sometimes that hope came from the simplest gestures. A door opened, a warm meal offered, a stranger's kindness extended. The next morning, Maria woke to the soft light of dawn filtering through the curtains of the guest room. She blinked a few times, adjusting to the brightness, and for a moment she felt disoriented. The warmth of the bed and the quiet of the house made her feel safe, almost cocooned, after the freezing night she had endured outside. It was a feeling she had not experienced in weeks, maybe even months. Her body felt rested, her mind clearer, and for the first time in a long time, she could think about the day ahead without panic pressing on her chest. She got up slowly, stretching her arms and legs, feeling the stiffness that comes from sleeping in one position too long. The events of the previous night began to replay in her mind. The cold, the fear, the rejection from the first 12 doors, and finally, the relief and warmth she had found at Tom's home. A small smile touched her lips. That single act of kindness had changed everything, reminding her that there were people in the world who still cared about strangers, who still believed in helping without expecting anything in return. As Maria walked down the hall toward the kitchen, she could smell coffee brewing. The aroma was comforting, filling the house with a sense of home. Tom was at the counter preparing breakfast. He looked up and smiled warmly when he saw her. "Good morning." "Did you sleep well?" he asked. His tone was gentle, sincere. Maria nodded, feeling a bit self-conscious but grateful. "Yes, thank you, more than I have in a long time," she replied softly. Breakfast was simple but nourishing. Eggs, toast, and fresh fruit, along with the steaming cup of coffee she gratefully accepted. They ate together in silence at first, the only sounds being the occasional clink of utensils and the soft hum of the morning. Maria felt a sense of normalcy she had almost forgotten existed. She realized how small things, like a proper meal and a clean table, could restore not only energy but dignity. After breakfast, Tom suggested that they sit down and talk about her situation. Maria's stomach tightened at the thought. She had spent so long hiding her struggles, keeping her fears and failures to herself. But Tom's patient and non-judgmental demeanor gave her courage. She took a deep breath and began to share more details about her life. She spoke about her work, her illness, the bills that had piled up, and the apartment she had lost. She told him how lonely she felt, wandering through the town, rejected and cold. Tom listened intently, nodding at intervals but never interrupting. His eyes conveyed understanding, empathy, and quiet encouragement. Maria found herself talking more freely than she had in months, as though the simple act of being heard was healing some of the wounds that had been festering inside her. She realized how heavy the burden had been on her alone, how much of her energy had gone into hiding fear and despair. Speaking aloud allowed her to release some of it. Once she had finished, Tom leaned back in his chair, thoughtful. "I can see that you've been through a lot," he said gently. "And I know it hasn't been easy, but you're here now and that's a start. We'll figure out the next steps together." Maria nodded, tears pricking her eyes. She felt a mix of relief and gratitude. For the first time in weeks, she felt a sense of direction, a plan taking shape in the midst of chaos. Tom suggested that Maria rest for a while longer, letting her body regain strength before facing the day outside. She took his advice and sat by the fire with a blanket, watching the flames dance. The quiet moments allowed her to reflect on everything that had happened. She thought about the cold streets, the closed doors, the moments of despair, and how close she had come to giving up. And yet, here she was, safe and warm, with someone willing to help her navigate the challenges ahead. As the morning turned to afternoon, Tom introduced Maria to some of the ranch tasks she could help with if she wanted. He explained that there was always work to be done, feeding animals, cleaning barns, repairing fences, and other chores that required effort but were manageable. Maria hesitated at first, worried that she might not be able to do the work or that she might not be welcome. But Tom reassured her. "We all start somewhere," he said. "You don't have to do everything at once, just start with what you can manage." Maria decided to try. She followed Tom to the barn, feeling nervous but also excited. She had never worked on a ranch before, but the simple tasks seemed approachable. She began by helping feed the animals, moving carefully so as not to frighten them. Tom guided her patiently, showing her how to handle the tools and perform the chores efficiently. Maria found herself concentrating on the work, feeling a sense of purpose she hadn't felt in a long time. As the hours passed, Maria discovered a rhythm to the work. The physical labor was tiring but also rewarding. She felt a sense of accomplishment in completing tasks, seeing immediate results from her efforts. The animals responded to her care, and the barn became less intimidating with each step she took. For the first time in weeks, she felt useful, capable, and valued. Tom occasionally offered guidance, but he gave her space to learn and make mistakes. This balance of support and independence helped Maria regain confidence in herself. During breaks, they would sit together, sipping water and talking about life. Tom shared stories of his experiences on the ranch, the challenges of running it, and the rewards of working with animals and the land. Maria listened, fascinated by the simplicity and depth of his life. She began to share more about her own experiences, though carefully, still cautious of how much to reveal. Their conversations became a bridge between two worlds, her recent struggles and his steady, grounded life, and Maria felt herself reconnecting with the sense of community and human connection she had almost forgotten. As evening approached, the sky painted in soft shades of pink and orange, Maria felt tired but satisfied. She had accomplished more than she had anticipated, and her muscles ached in a way that reminded her she was alive, active, and capable. Tom prepared a simple dinner, and they ate together, discussing plans for the following days. Maria felt a sense of hope she hadn't felt in months. The idea of starting over, of building stability step by step, no longer seemed impossible. After dinner, they cleaned up together, laughing lightly at small mishaps, spilled water, misaligned dishes, and clumsy movements. Maria felt a connection growing between them, a bond built on trust, mutual respect, and shared effort. For someone who had spent weeks feeling invisible and alone, it was a profound experience to be recognized, appreciated, and welcomed into another person's life. Later that night, Maria reflected on the events of the day. She realized that the kindness of a stranger had opened a door, not just into a warm house, but into a path toward a new beginning. She had been given more than food and shelter. She had been given hope, encouragement, and the opportunity to rebuild her life. She thought about the 12 doors that had closed on her and understood that while rejection had been painful, it had also made her appreciate the single act of acceptance that much more. Before going to bed, Maria wrote in her small notebook, recording her thoughts and experiences. Writing had always been a way for her to process emotions, and now it helped her reflect on her journey. She wrote about the fear, the cold, the hunger, and the exhaustion, but also about the warmth, the kindness, and the sense of possibility she had found. Putting her thoughts on paper allowed her to see her progress and the strength she had discovered within herself. That night, as she lay under the blanket, Maria felt a deep sense of gratitude. She understood that her journey would not be easy and that challenges would continue to arise. But she also understood that she was not alone, that there were people willing to help, and that she had the resilience to face whatever came next. The small spark of hope she had felt the previous night had grown into a steady flame, guiding her through uncertainty and fear. Maria fell asleep with a quiet determination. She did not know exactly what the future held, but she was ready to face it with courage, patience, and an open heart. The experience had taught her the value of human kindness, the importance of perseverance, and the strength that could be found in moments of vulnerability. She knew that she could move forward, step by step, building a life she could be proud of once again. And so, with the ranch quiet around her, the animals resting after a long day, and the fire burning softly in the next room, Maria embraced the comfort and hope she had found. She had faced fear, despair, and rejection, yet she had also discovered warmth, compassion, and the possibility of a new beginning. In the silence of the evening, she felt ready to continue her journey, grateful for the stranger who had opened his door, and determined to find her place in the world once more. Days passed on the ranch, and Maria began to feel more like herself again. Each morning, she woke early, greeted by the soft light of the rising sun and the sounds of the animals beginning their day. Chickens clucked in the yard, cows lowed in the distance, and the wind rustled gently through the trees. There was a rhythm to life here, a structure and purpose that Maria had not known she needed. Every task she completed gave her a sense of pride and accomplishment she had forgotten. But as much as she appreciated the routine, there were moments when doubt crept in. She still felt the weight of her past struggles pressing on her mind. Losing her apartment, her job, and her independence had left deep scars. Sometimes, when she worked quietly in the barn or fed the animals, her thoughts drifted to the people who had closed their doors on her. She wondered if she would ever feel completely safe in the world again, or if the fear of rejection would always linger at the edges of her heart. One morning, as Maria carried a bucket of water to the barn, she noticed a storm brewing on the horizon. The clouds were dark and heavy, and the wind carried the sharp scent of rain. Tom came out to check the fields, his coat flapping in the wind. "Looks like we're in for a rough day," he said. Maria nodded, gripping the bucket tightly. The storm was a reminder that life could be unpredictable, that challenges could arrive suddenly and without warning. As the rain began to fall, first in light drops and then in heavier sheets, the chores became more difficult. Mud formed quickly, making the ground slippery and treacherous. Maria struggled to maintain her footing while carrying feed to the animals. Her arms ached, her boots were soaked, and the cold rain made her shiver. She felt exhaustion creeping in, testing her resolve. This was the moment when her inner strength would be challenged, when perseverance became more than just a word, it became a necessity. Tom noticed her struggle and called out, "Take it slow, you'll be fine." His voice was calm but firm. He moved to help her carry some of the heavier buckets, but he also allowed her to complete tasks on her own. It was a delicate balance. He supported her without taking away her independence. Maria realized that this was how trust and care worked, not by doing everything for someone, but by guiding them until they could stand on their own. By the afternoon, the storm had worsened. Rain poured down in relentless sheets, the wind howled, and the animals grew restless. Maria had just finished feeding the cows when a sudden gust of wind knocked over a stack of hay bales. She froze for a moment, heart racing, unsure of how to react. Tom shouted for her to step back, and she did, watching as he moved quickly to secure the bales. Her pulse slowed slightly, but the adrenaline left her shaking. She realized how quickly circumstances could change and how important it was to stay alert and adaptable. The rest of the day was filled with small emergencies, leaking roofs, slippery floors, and frightened animals. Maria worked alongside Tom, following his instructions, learning to anticipate problems before they became serious. Each challenge tested her patience, her focus, and her stamina. There were moments when she wanted to give up, to let the storm win, but she pushed herself forward. With each task she completed, no matter how small, she felt a growing confidence, a realization that she could face difficulties head-on. During a brief break, Maria sat by the fire in the barn, dripping wet but warm from the flames. She sipped a cup of tea that Tom had brought her and reflected on the past weeks. She had come to the ranch as a stranger in need, unsure of her place in the world. She had faced fear, rejection, and despair. Yet here she was, working hard, learning new skills, and beginning to rebuild a sense of purpose. The journey had not been easy, but every step had been worth it. Tom joined her at the fire, sitting quietly for a moment before speaking. "You've done really well, Maria," he said. "I can see the difference in you. You face so much, but you haven't given up. That's not something everyone can do." Maria felt a swell of pride mixed with gratitude. To have someone acknowledge her effort, her resilience, and her determination was more powerful than any reward. It reinforced the belief she had been struggling to hold on to, that she was capable, strong, and worthy of care and respect. That evening after the storm had passed, Maria stepped outside to survey the ranch. The rain had softened the earth, leaving a fresh, clean scent in the air. Puddles reflected the fading light, and the animals settled into their stalls, calm after the chaos. Maria felt a sense of accomplishment and relief. She had endured the storm, both literally and figuratively, and had emerged stronger. The challenges had tested her, but they had also revealed a side of herself she had almost forgotten, a side that was brave, determined, and capable of overcoming obstacles. As she walked back to the house, Maria thought about the journey that had brought her here. The nights spent wandering in the cold, the doors that had closed in her face, the moments of despair that had seemed endless, all of it had led to this moment. She realized that while the past could not be changed, the future was still hers to shape. The kindness Tom had shown her, the opportunity to work and learn, and the sense of community she had begun to feel gave her hope for a life rebuilt, one step at a time. Later that night, Maria reflected on the lessons she had learned. She understood that life was unpredictable, that storms would come, both literal and metaphorical. But she also realized that resilience, determination, and the support of others could carry a person through even the harshest trials. The storm had been a turning point, a moment that tested her courage and revealed her inner strength. It was a reminder that challenges were not just obstacles, they were opportunities to grow, to discover what one was truly capable of. Maria felt a sense of peace as she lay in bed that night. She thought about the journey ahead, the steps she would need to take to regain stability, independence, and confidence. She knew it would not be easy, that there would be setbacks and difficult moments. But she also knew that she had the strength to face them, and the support of someone who believed in her. The combination of self-belief and compassion from others created a foundation she could rely on as she moved forward. As sleep began to claim her, Maria reflected on the meaning of kindness. She realized that the simple act of opening a door, offering warmth, and listening without judgment could change someone's life. Tom had done that for her, and in doing so, he had given her more than just shelter. He had given her hope, courage, and a sense of possibility. It was a lesson she would carry with her always, a reminder that one act of compassion could create ripples of change that extended far beyond a single night. Maria drifted into a deep sleep, feeling safe, valued, and hopeful. The storm had passed, the chaos was over, and she had survived both the elements and the fear that had threatened to overwhelm her. She knew that challenges would continue to arise, but she felt prepared to meet them with determination, resilience, and an open heart. The journey was far from over, but she was no longer alone. She had found a place, a purpose, and a person who believed in her, a combination that gave her the strength to face whatever came next. By the time morning came again, Maria was ready to continue her journey. She rose with a renewed sense of energy and focus, eager to contribute to the ranch, learn new skills, and rebuild her life. Each day was a step forward, each task a building block in the foundation of a new beginning. She understood that success was not instantaneous, that recovery and growth required patience, effort, and persistence. But she also understood that she was capable of achieving it, one day at a time. The storm, the challenges, and the moments of doubt had all led to a realization. Maria was stronger than she had believed, and the kindness of a stranger had illuminated a path toward hope and healing. The experience had changed her, teaching her the value of perseverance, gratitude, and human connection. She knew that the journey ahead would continue to test her, but she also knew that she had the tools, the support, and the inner strength to face whatever lay ahead. As she stepped out into the crisp morning air, Maria felt the sun warming her face. She took a deep breath, savoring the fresh scent of earth and grass after the storm. For the first time in a long time, she felt ready to embrace life again, not with fear, but with determination, courage, and hope. The challenges she had faced had shaped her, but they had not broken her. She was ready to take the next steps, guided by the lessons she had learned and the kindness she had been shown. The days after the storm were calm, and Maria found herself settling into a rhythm at the ranch. She woke each morning with renewed determination, eager to continue learning and contributing. The work was still challenging, but now it felt less intimidating. She had grown stronger both physically and emotionally, and she began to notice the subtle ways she was changing. Her confidence was returning, her spirit was lighter, and the sense of hopelessness that had once weighed on her seemed far away. Tom had been patient and encouraging throughout her stay. He offered guidance when necessary, but allowed Maria to take initiative, trusting her to make decisions and handle responsibilities on her own. This trust meant more to her than she could express. For the first time in months, she felt capable and valued. Each day she completed a task, no matter how small, she felt a sense of accomplishment that she hadn't felt in a long time. Feeding the animals, mending fences, or tending to the garden became more than chores. They became ways for her to rebuild her sense of self. One morning, while collecting eggs from the chicken coop, Maria reflected on the journey that had brought her here. She remembered the bitter cold, the 12 doors that had turned her away, and the fear that had gripped her as she wandered through the town. She remembered her exhaustion, her hunger, and the weight of uncertainty pressing down on her. And she remembered the 13th door, the one that had changed everything. Tom's act of kindness had given her more than just shelter. It had given her a chance to reclaim her life. Maria realized that she wanted to make the most of that opportunity. She began looking for ways to regain her independence. With Tom's help, she connected with a local shelter that offered support for people rebuilding their lives. They assisted her in finding temporary housing, basic necessities, and even employment opportunities. While the road ahead was still uncertain, Maria felt hopeful. She had a plan, a support system, and the motivation to move forward. Tom encouraged her every step of the way. "You've got the strength to do this," he said one evening as they sat by the fire. "You've proven it every day here on the ranch. Now it's time to take that strength and use it for yourself." Maria nodded, feeling the truth of his words deep within her. She had endured hardship, faced her fears, and grown stronger. Now, it was time to take the lessons she had learned and apply them to the next chapter of her life. In the following weeks, Maria began working part-time at a local farm, applying the skills she had developed at the ranch. She woke early each morning, tending to animals, planting seeds, and helping with maintenance. The work was demanding, but Maria found satisfaction in it. Each task reminded her of her own resilience and capability. She also made connections with other workers, slowly building a new circle of support and friendship. For the first time in months, she felt part of a community again. Maria's evenings were spent reflecting on her progress. She kept a small journal, documenting her experiences, feelings, and plans. Writing became a way to process her emotions, to celebrate small victories, and to acknowledge the challenges she had overcome. She wrote about the cold nights, the rejection she had faced, and the fear that had once paralyzed her. But she also wrote about the warmth of the fire, the kindness of Tom, and the growing confidence she felt with each passing day. One day, as she was helping with the harvest, Maria encountered a young woman who reminded her of herself, struggling, lost, and unsure where to turn. Without hesitation, Maria offered guidance, shared resources, and listened with patience and empathy. She realized that her experiences had prepared her to help others, to be the kind of person who could make a difference in someone's life. In that moment, Maria understood the full circle of kindness. Tom had helped her when she needed it most, and now she could extend that same compassion to someone else. The months passed, and Maria's life began to stabilize. She found a small apartment with the help of the shelter and was able to pay rent through her work at the farm. She saved a little each month, planning for the future. Her confidence grew with each accomplishment, and she felt a renewed sense of independence. The fear and uncertainty that had once dominated her life were replaced by hope, determination, and a belief in her own strength. Maria never forgot Tom, the man who had opened his door on that freezing night. She visited him regularly, bringing meals, sharing stories, and helping with tasks on the ranch. Their bond had grown strong, based on trust, mutual respect, and shared experiences. Maria often thought about how one simple act of kindness had set off a chain of events that had transformed her life. She felt deep gratitude, knowing that his generosity had been the turning point she desperately needed. As the seasons changed, Maria continued to grow. She became more involved in the community, volunteering at the local shelter and helping others who were struggling. Her experiences gave her empathy and insight that others appreciated. She had been through hardship and emerged stronger, and she wanted to ensure that others had the support they needed to overcome their own challenges. Her life had taken on new meaning, filled with purpose, connection, and the satisfaction of making a positive difference. One quiet evening, Maria sat on the porch of her new apartment, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and pink. She thought about her journey, the cold streets, the rejection, the fear, and the despair. She thought about the warmth of Tom's home, the work on the ranch, and the small steps she had taken toward rebuilding her life. She realized that while the past could not be changed, the future was hers to shape. Every choice, every effort, and every act of kindness she experienced or gave would contribute to the life she was creating. Maria understood the importance of resilience, patience, and hope. She had faced challenges that seemed insurmountable, yet she had persevered. She had discovered her own strength, the power of human kindness, and the value of community. These lessons would stay with her forever, guiding her through future obstacles and inspiring her to help others along the way. In the months that followed, Maria began sharing her story with others, speaking at community events and writing articles about her experiences. She wanted people to understand that even in the darkest moments, there was hope, and that one act of kindness could change a life forever. Her story inspired others to offer support, compassion, and understanding to those in need. Maria had turned her struggles into a source of strength and inspiration, showing that adversity could be transformed into opportunity and growth. Through all of this, Maria never lost sight of the small details that had made the greatest difference: the warmth of a fire, the kindness of a stranger, the simple offer of food and shelter. She learned to appreciate the everyday blessings that many take for granted. She celebrated her accomplishments, no matter how small, and acknowledged the steps she had taken toward rebuilding her life. Each day became a testament to her resilience and her ability to thrive despite adversity. Years later, Maria often reflected on that freezing night when she knocked on 12 doors and finally found safety at the 13th. She thought about the fear, the exhaustion, and the despair she had felt. But she also remembered the warmth, the compassion, and the opportunity that had transformed her life. She realized that her journey was not just about survival. It was about growth, self-discovery, and the power of human connection. Maria had learned that life was unpredictable and that challenges would continue to arise. But she also knew that with resilience, determination, and the support of others, she could face any obstacle. Her experiences had taught her to trust herself, to value kindness, and to believe in the possibility of a brighter future. She carried these lessons with her every day, living her life with gratitude, purpose, and hope. The woman who had once wandered through the cold streets, shivering and lost, had become a source of inspiration, compassion, and strength. Maria had reclaimed her life, rebuilt her confidence, and discovered the power of kindness and perseverance. Her journey was a testament to the human spirit, showing that even in the most difficult circumstances, hope could be found and life could be transformed. As she looked out over the town from her small balcony, Maria felt a deep sense of fulfillment. She had faced fear, rejection, and uncertainty, yet she had emerged stronger and wiser. She had found safety, purpose, and community. She had learned to trust herself and others, and she had discovered the profound impact of compassion. The journey had been long and challenging, but Maria had not only survived, she had truly begun to live again.